Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Interceptor Researches. This time I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, monsters. Greek and Roman mythology was always one of my favorite things growing up. I watched all those old Clash of the Titan, Jason the Argonaut films. I would play little hero adventure stories with my brother, play all these video games that have all these references, and it's just awesome. And so when I went to college, I was really fortunate my undergraduate had a very strong classics program, which is why I chose it. I wanted to be a classics major. I wanted to be a classics teacher when I entered college. And I actually took 3 Greek mythology courses over the course of my undergraduate degree. Mythology, advanced mythology, and theory of myth, which was a lot of fun. It was really intense, but it made me really ready for graduate school. I have a bit of a love-hate for games like God of War, where they take the myths and really do something crazy with them. And in some ways, it's awesome. If you've ever taken a myth course, if you've read a lot of Greek mythology, you know that there's no right myth. There's no one right version of any story. These were very active stories in the Greek world. And by that I mean people could take them and own them and change them. And so in modern culture, we're really doing the same thing. We're taking these stories and making them conform to whatever point we're trying to get across. And so I do have a certain amount of flexibility, but sometimes I see things that just make me cringe and I just can't deal with it because it just goes against everything. And one of those things that God of War suffers from, as well as a lot of movies today, is the death of the gods. Like, they manage to kill gods, which is just, that's not accurate. Like, you could not do that in antiquity. That's ridiculous. So that's one of the points that kind of sticks, like, you don't understand the culture. You're using this myth and you don't get it. But one of the things that they do get that I really think is cool in God of War is the way that they did the design of the Titans and the monsters. I think they're really cool. And that's another area where there's a lot of freedom. And so I just want to kind of introduce you to the creation of these mythological monsters from a historical perspective. I, myself, am a big fan of the theory by Adrienne Meyer, you can look her up, who studies what she calls the first archaeologist, or the first paleontologist, the first fossil hunters, or what she calls them. And so she talks about how the ancient Greeks, when they were, going about their business, they would see fossils like ancient whales or dinosaurs or other creatures that would end up in the, in the ocean or fossilized in, the limestone caves or elsewhere along the coast. And they'd be like, what the heck is that? And some of the theories that they came up with are they are the bones of heroes. So certain creatures, the way that they kind of flatten out over time, they look a bit like human skeletons, but giant. And so these were the bones of heroes. Probably the most famous are the bones of Orestes. So the bones of Orestes were taken from Greece to Aricia, which is a city south of Rome where there's a really important cult to Diana. And then eventually the Emperor Augustus and a lot of people might have heard of Augustus, he took them from Erisha up to Rome and put them in the Temple of Saturn that was really near the heart of Rome. So they were kind of a big deal. But other bones did not look very human at all. And these were monsters, and that was the thing that made sense. And in the ancient Greek mindset, way back, back when the first visualizations of these monsters were coming about, nobody really knew what to put on them, right? So let me show you. First of all, I'm going to show you a sculpture by Bernini from this book, Bernini, Genius of the Baroque by Charles Avery, photography by David Finn. Bernini is my favorite sculptor, and he did a lot of famous works that you can see in Rome today and elsewhere, but mostly in Rome. Maybe all in Rome, I'm not actually 100% sure. So there's Cerberus, the three-headed dog of Hades, looking very much like a three-headed dog, and kind of very much like we see him, here's a close-up of one of the dogs. So very much like you would imagine a three-headed dog. And over the years, the form of the monsters became really kind of set, right? The popular versions of the dogs became set. And in something like the movie Hercules or in TV shows today, they might make him look bigger and a bit more monstrous. But very few, I would say, give Cerberus snakes on the feet, the noses, and the neck. That's not a thing we see nowadays, but it was very common there. Cerberus did have poisonous spit, and he does. And so the way that artists would depict that would be the snakes, because snakes are poisonous. They weren't evil per se, and this is an important thing about Greek culture. Snakes were not evil, but they were powerful. They were signs of the earth, they were signs of kind of primordial power. Primordial, chthonic, or earthly power. And so when you see snakes, that is a sign of this is an old power. And this is not some new Olympian. This is older. This is old magic. And so Cerberus gets depicted with these snakes because he's underground, so he's connected with the earth, and he's an old power. Old. And so when artists were designing monsters, especially early on, they just kind of had a set of features that were considered monstrous or powerful, old and powerful. So you might see snakes, you might see wings, you might see, horse bodies. There's a bunch of really strange art according to our perception of what we expect something to look like because of the tradition and the variants that happened before. One of my favorite that I don't have a picture of is Medusa, and we always imagine Medusa with the head and the snaky hair and everything like that. But this Medusa also has a horse body, right? Where did you get that, dude? Not canon. But they can do what they want because they were creating it. What do they know? So here's another depiction of, this is a death demon. Let's try and get him centered there. This is an Etruscan death demon called Vamph. So again, you see the snakes and the wings denoting power. Old, earthly power. And last, just to give you a picture to again make this point that images change over the years. So this, it's a person. It's got some wings. There's a bunch of animals, of rabbits, lions, and a hawk. Maybe a hawk, maybe an eagle. And the snakes. Don't forget the snakes. So definitely a very powerful figure with the snakes and the wings and the animals flanking. And this is Artemis. So probably not the Artemis that you're used to seeing, but that's an early original Artemis. That's old school Artemis. But probably my favorite creature is the Chimera. So here's a famous Etruscan bronze of the Chimera with the lion head, the snake tail, and the goat that breathes fire coming out of its side. Here is a sculpture of the same, very similar in image with the lion head, the snake tail, and the goat breathing fire in the middle. Now, my theory is that somebody found a skeleton of these three animals very close together. Right? Maybe a lion was eating a goat. They found the dead body and it kind of looked like there was a goat coming off the side or something. And then they put on a snake because snakes denote earthly wild power. So just throw in a snake. Could have thrown in some wings too, whatever. But I love that a goat got turned into a monster because you're kind of like, goat, like, lion, okay, yeah, lions are scary, snakes, okay, a goat? But goats are kind of interesting because although they are domesticated animals, they're not as domesticated as, say, dogs or horses that really become a part of the household. Even like sheep maybe will sleep inside the house, depending. But goats are still kind of wild. They travel far. You have the lone goat herd going with them. They eat anything, and maybe at a moment's notice, they won't be domesticated anymore. They are in this gray area between being a human animal and a wild animal. And so there is a sense of danger about that. And so I think that's why the goat head got pulled into that, because goats are kind of in this gray area. And the depictions of all these creatures are totally awesome in God of War. And in part because they look kind of what you would imagine, and in part because they reach back to that tradition, maybe unintentionally, of just drawing in whatever elements they want and just being like, yeah, that's a monster. Monsters all totally have snake tails, right? Yeah, let's throw in some more snakes. And so even though sometimes I would come across an enemy God of War and go, wait, what is that? I would eventually come around to it because that is authentic, right? Just throwing in more monster parts to make it look scary. Totally legit, totally what the Greeks would do. I approve. And so that's this episode of Interceptor Researches. Please comment below if you have any questions for me, anything you would like me to expand on or answer about monsters or anything else. Please like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, Interceptor out.